The government shutdown clock is ticking, and Donald Trump just made a move that Democrats are calling reckless. House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries isn't holding back, and what he's revealing about the Republican healthcare agenda could affect millions of Americans. This isn't just politics, this is about life and death. Just hours ago, Trump abruptly canceled a critical White House meeting with Democratic leaders Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, leaving the nation on the brink of a government shutdown. With only days before the September 30th deadline, Jeffries says this exposes a Republican strategy designed to keep Americans in the dark. The meeting was supposed to address funding the government, but according to Jeffries, Republicans are avoiding transparency because they don't want to defend the impact of their healthcare policies. Here's what happened. Democratic aides say Trump initially agreed to the meeting, acknowledging how serious the situation is. But this morning, he reversed course. Jeffries called it an unhinged move, and reports say Speaker Mike Johnson and other GOP leaders convinced Trump that meeting with Democrats would weaken their negotiating position. In other words, Republicans are risking a shutdown instead of having to explain their healthcare cuts in public.
Jeffries didn't mince words. Donald Trump, House Republicans, and Senate Republicans are running scared. Why? Because he says their healthcare agenda is indefensible. According to Jeffries, Republicans are pushing deep cuts to Medicaid, cuts he describes as some of the largest in American history. Millions of families who already struggle with costs could be left without care. Jeffries outlined the stakes. The Republican funding bill represents what Democrats call an assault on healthcare. Medicaid cuts would mean fewer people able to afford basic care. Hospitals, nursing homes, and community clinics, already under financial pressure, could close, especially in rural America, where options are scarce. This isn't just an urban issue or a partisan talking point. These cuts would touch rural towns, suburbs, and communities of color nationwide. Here's the number that should grab your attention. $536 billion. That's the amount Medicare could lose over the next decade, according to Democratic analysis of the GOP's One Big Ugly Bill. Those dollars represent care for seniors and people with disabilities. Combine that with Medicaid cuts, and critics argue Republicans are dismantling the nation's healthcare safety net.
The human cost is staggering. Analysts say more than 20 million Americans could face higher premiums, copays, and deductibles if Republicans refuse to extend Affordable Care Act subsidies. Those subsidies have been keeping healthcare affordable for working families. Jeffries also warned that GOP proposals slash funding for medical research, including research into childhood cancer. Democrats say that while Republicans claim to be pro-life, these cuts would endanger lives by halting potential medical breakthroughs. The proposed cuts don't just touch one program. They ripple across the entire public health system. Agencies like the National Institutes of Health and the CDC could face major reductions. That would mean less vaccine research, weaker disease prevention, and fewer resources for emergency response. Critics warn that America's leadership in healthcare innovation is on the line. When asked about these issues, Trump pivoted to cultural debates, including transgender policies, avoiding questions about healthcare funding. Jeffries argued this proves Republicans can't defend their healthcare agenda. As he put it, the only issues here are the health, safety, and economic well-being of the American people. Jeffries also pushed back on Trump's economic promises. While Trump pledged to lower costs, many families say they feel squeezed. Inflation and tariffs have driven up prices on everyday goods. At the same time, Republicans are proposing cuts to the very programs that help families manage healthcare costs. For working Americans, that's a double hit. Democrats say the solution is simple: cancel the cuts, lower the costs, save healthcare. Jeffries repeated this line to drive home the contrast. He added that Democrats are ready to negotiate anytime, anywhere. But so far, Republicans have walked away. On the question of unity, Jeffries stressed that Democrats in both chambers are united. He called the Republican plan an unprecedented assault on healthcare and warned the consequences are literally life and death. Democrats, he said, will not stand by while people's lives are put at risk. Here's what's striking. Republicans controlled the House, Senate, and White House, but Jeffries says they're avoiding responsibility. Speaker Johnson even canceled scheduled votes, leaving Washington as a shutdown looms.
For Democrats, that's proof the GOP is putting politics over governing. The effects could be most devastating in rural communities. Across the country, small hospitals and nursing homes are already shutting down. New cuts could accelerate closures, forcing elderly residents and families to travel hours for care. Jeffries warned that rural Americans, often Republican voters, are being abandoned by these policies. Not all Republicans are comfortable with the direction. Senator Lisa Murkowski and Representative Jen Kiggans have raised concerns about rising costs for constituents. When lawmakers in your own party start sounding alarms, it shows how controversial these cuts are.
Republicans have framed their proposal as a clean, continuing resolution, but Democrats call it a dirty bill. Why? Because it continues policies they argue are already hurting Americans: cuts to health care, veteran services, housing, and nutrition assistance. Democrats rejected a similar package earlier this year, and they say nothing has changed. Jeffries emphasized that while Republicans are canceling votes, Democrats will be back in Washington Monday. He said the contrast couldn't be clearer. Democrats want to govern, Republicans want to posture. Jeffries also put this in perspective. We've never seen anything like it. He says the scale of cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, and research goes beyond normal budget disputes. From big cities to small towns, every community would feel the impact.
The consequences aren't abstract. When people lose Medicaid, they lose access to life-saving medication. When hospitals close, people die from preventable conditions. When research stalls, cures are never discovered. Jeffries' warning is blunt. People will die if these cuts go through. Remember Trump's promise to lower costs on day one? Families are still waiting. Instead, costs are rising, tariffs are inflating prices, and healthcare programs are on the chopping block. Democrats argue it's the opposite of what was promised, which explains why Republicans are avoiding open debate. So what happens now? Democrats say the path is clear. Cancel the cuts, lower the costs, save healthcare. The ball is in Republican hands. Will they negotiate to avoid a shutdown or let the government close to protect policies they can't defend?
The shutdown deadline is days away. Millions of Americans are watching. Will Republicans face the public and explain their healthcare cuts, or keep running from accountability? Democrats say they're ready to fight because for American families, the stakes couldn't be higher.